Hi, and welcome to Heaven. This is Raquel Alves,
Julia Kibilda.
and today we welcome you to 2025. Hello.
Woo!
Woo! One of us is already 25, the other one is incoming. Julia, how do you feel? Like January has been quite busy for you.
I feel good. Honestly, I feel like my frontal lobe really is developing. I feel like by turning 25, I can just see more clearly, I can see my goals more clearly. Or maybe I'm just like on a high of being in the new year and trying to get shit done so that I don't feel like my next year is going to be exactly the same as my last year. So I'm desperately trying to make changes in my life.
Like straight away before
Yeah,
time
honestly,
runs.
I was like first week of January, I gotta get shit done. The celebration season is over, and as soon as my birthday was over, I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it.
Great.
But
I mean, feel that too once I reach my 25 and I just feel like life getting together somehow.
yeah, we'll see how like the momentum sustains. I'll keep you updated, but for now it's going pretty good. So
Okay, nice, nice. Well, welcome everyone. We thought that to have a very light beginnings to this year, we've been going to talk about this online trend that has been going around for actually years, which is about trad wives online, mostly TikTok, but pretty much everywhere.
I've noticed it over a year ago, and I remember sending you some videos. I was like, is this a joke? Like, is this real? Like, what the fuck is it?
Yeah.
And then more and more videos started popping up, and more accounts in the same vein. I don't know, every time I see it, I just get so disturbed. And
So
I know,
yeah, so I would say that there's like two I when I like was looking into it, there's kind of two different kinds of trad wives. There's the ones who self-proclaim themselves as trad wives and create content in that way.
yeah,
And then you have ones where other people have labeled them as trad wives, which the majority of the most famous influencers are those who don't call themselves as trad wives. So for
yeah,
example,
like Nara Smith.
Mara Smith or I don't know, like Ballerina Farm and those kind of influences, which mostly focus on baking videos, making food from scratch, uh, all the time.
Making my life from scratch. This is me in 2025, making my life from scratch.
Yeah, quite literally. But I feel like those, the ones that are actually quite famous, aren't problematic at all. Like, I feel like I have a huge beef with the ones who call themselves trad wives and have that is the base content of their online like persona.
Yeah, I agree. For those of you who don't know who a trad wave is or haven't come across, if there are some listeners, although I really doubt, I feel like it's so permeating the online space that most people do realize who a trad wave is. But basically, trad wives are just women who proclaim that they're the traditional wife and, they're devoted to their womanly duties of being a mother and a household keeper. And, they do all these traditional womanly tasks like cooking for their family, etc., etc. But actually, on this note, what I find interesting is that most of those famous accounts are a glamorized version of what a housewife is.
Yeah.
So you'll notice that all of them usually show the glamorous aspects of it. So like cooking and doing all the nice things and preparing pretty meals or harvesting vegetables from my garden and not like scrubbing the toilet.
No, yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's also a term slash role, right, that has actually been around for quite a few years. So I saw that this term was first coined around 2016, which to me, I was like, oh, that was like 5 years ago. No, we're in 2025. So it's almost 10 years that this kind of like,
Wait, what?
yes.
You can't tell me that 2016 was 10 years ago.
Well, it was nine, but it's
I
almost.
I just refuse to, my brain refuses to acknowledge that information. Anything right before 2020 is like a year, 2 years away. 2020 to 2025 is like 2 years, actually. It's
Yeah,
not five.
because like three was pandemic, that's why. Well,
Anyway,
existential crisis aside, this was originated more in the manosphere, obviously, and also the Christian online spaces. So, of course,
yeah.
these like definitions, as you were saying, of like the womanly duties, the what a woman should be is as a wife to a husband and the children is obviously rooted in religion. And as first before the trad wife was actually referred as the Christian wife, and then it's slowly like changed into a traditional wife. And it kind of slowly made its way into the female sphere of the internet, like in between the mommy bloggers and cottagecore enthusiasts cooking of baking videos. It's
Yeah.
kind of started to introduce herself like within this realm, which I think also shows the power of its rhetoric, because instead of having this like very typical alpha male podcast, ruthless, you have to do this and that to your men, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like the discourse is being distributed to young women in a more aesthetic way. So
Yeah, definitely.
with like glamorization, as you're saying, of like
Exactly.
all those duties. Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, I feel like now that I think about it, I feel like the pandemic might have played a big part in it because everyone was at home. And so a lot of people naturally took to those like household hobbies because there was nothing else you could do. So as you said, cooking, staying in touch with nature, doing more traditional things because work was not really a possibility at the time. So I feel like that might have also played quite a big role in how this emerged, but also kind of it preys a lot on the general tiredness of the younger population with the traditional work scheme, being in the office for the full day. And so naturally, we become to glamorize those household duties because they seem so much more appealing than, being in the office for 8 hours a day and working for someone else. Naturally, it feels much nicer to, be cooking for 8 hours a day in a very aesthetic way, making cute cakes and tending to the kids. And the biggest part of these accounts that are kind of promoting these traditional roles is that none of them show the reality.
Mhm.
And actually, I came across this really interesting thing, which is that most of these influencers make obviously a massive, massive amount of their income comes from that. So of like being influencer and promoting those skills and in a sense. And this video in particular mentioned Nara Smith, who I think is a different example in itself as well, because she gets a lot of high-end fashion brand deals and she used to model and her husband is a model. So she kind of borders on celebrity, but we should actually consider all those influencers kind of in the celebrity sphere. And what this person was saying, I don't remember who it was at the time, the person was saying that basically this is a classic tale of elites cosplaying the poor.
No, definitely. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because it brought up this term that was, yeah, basically that the rich have the ability to do what the poor do for fun because they have nothing else to do. So, someone like Nara Smith has the time to pretend that she's making gum from scratch because she has a team of people who are taking care of other things. She probably has a cleaner in her house. She probably has a full-time nanny.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool you brought that up, because that's what you're talking about. It's called conspicuous leisure.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking
There
for.
you go. Yeah. Yeah, because when you see her videos, she's mostly performing labor that it's completely unnecessary. Like it is not necessary to make those cereals from scratch. It's kind of like showing, it's like almost symbolic labor. And she's like showing how, look how much time I actually have that I can make these things from scratch that are completely unnecessary. Like I am wealthy enough to afford this time. That's kind of what it says.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not, I'm not accusing her of like saying those things. It's more like this is what the content says to us as the viewer. So, yeah, it's quite interesting because when you're so wealthy, you don't contribute to the economic production of the world and how like the economic systems work. So you produce leisure, which makes so much
Yeah.
sense in nowadays that we have so many content creators, because it's producing content, it's producing leisure to other people. So like this online trad wife is essentially useless, mind the term, because it doesn't perform real labor. So it's not even an actual domestic stay-at-home mom in that
Exactly. It's
traditional
not
sense.
it's not giving life hacks to a regular mom who's struggling with her day-to-day job and raising children. Or maybe she's a full-time mom, but she's still struggling because bringing up kids is a basically a full-time job in itself. So it's not like, hey, this is how to make your life quicker and easier. It's the opposite. It's
Yeah.
making unnecessary labor and producing unnecessary things for other people's visual and pleasure or rage bait or whatever it is. So much because then people compare themselves to
To
people
them.
like that they see on screen and they feel like, oh, am I a bad mother because I'm not making my children organic candy from scratch or organic chewing gum from scratch and I'm just buying a 1 pound chewing gum from a store? Am I being a bad person for that? And I feel like that's so harmful because these influencers are in no way transparent about how their life actually looks like. They're cosplaying a version of their life that they think their viewers are interested in seeing. And that's kind of aspirational for their viewers, but at the same time relatable enough for them to be hooked.
And I think when you have someone like Nara Smith, who is actually quite very wealthy, and you have someone perhaps from the middle class or lower class trying to perform these roles as well, it just becomes even more symbolic because it's actually a true emulation of the higher classes so that you can like associate yourself to by being able to afford all that time for almost your hobbies. You're kind of like validating your capital power, actually. And it's just like a lot. And I feel between all these self-called tradwives, there's a bit of dissonance about their way of like considering it. Is it really a job or is it not? Like, is it
Mm.
labor or is it leisure? Because at the same time as they say like, oh, this is my job, this is my position as a wife, like this is my duties to do. At the same time, they also praise the fact they don't have to do any real job and they can just be at home and relax and be more creative. So there's a bit of contradiction, I feel, in a lot of like their own discourse.
And at the same time, they're making income from performing it as an activity online
Yeah.
and creating a certain persona. So in a way, it's not like you're not doing anything. You have a job, which is being an online creator, and that's a very privileged position to be in the first place, to make your income from simply performing your day-to-day duties, quote unquote, for other people online. And so, in the first place, them saying, like, oh, I don't have a job, so I can do all those things, it's false because you do have a job. Your job is to be an online creator and do these things for other people online and record them. So, you're monetizing on it anyways. And a lot of mothers would love to be changing their children's nappies and making their dinners and make money off of it.
Yeah, it goes beyond just being hypocritical. It's just like a straight up lie at some point.
Exactly. And you have to be delusional not to realize that. But then I feel like a lot of people don't really realize how much money content creators like that actually make and how much engagement with their profile how much it produces for them. And for someone who just comes up across their profile, they're like, wow, you're such a good mom, you're doing this and you're doing that, and you're embracing this traditional role. So it must be so amazing to just be a stay-at-home mom and, do nothing but care for your family all day. But then a regular mom will not get any money from that. She will just be dependent on her husband with no source of income, and the only thing she'll have to do is take care of her kids. And so it's presenting such a false and warped reality to others.
Yeah, and it's essentially like they're preaching that, right? They're preaching
Yeah.
of staying at home and depending on your husband's like money to just live. Like, your husband will cover all your needs and necessaries, and you can just have to basically cook for him and take care of the kids, while at the same time having online businesses that they earn their own money from posing as not. And it's just I don't know if I would call that a problem, but it does not sound that right to me when you don't follow what you preach.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that there's also the other thing of these accounts being connected to a lot of traditional, I don't want to say far right, but like
But yeah.
traditional and more conservative views and beliefs, but then also a lot of other like trends and accounts that originate from that. And a lot of like the moms and the women who run these accounts, they claim like, oh, I'm gonna teach you how you can do that and how you can be happy as a stay-at-home mom. And then essentially they're just like running MLMs, which is a business in itself as well. And I'm like, you're just so full of shit. Like, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I can't deal with it. Like I just cannot deal. It just makes me so, I don't know, it feels like they there is definitely a lot of like far right connotations to it because this thing of being a trad wife is not simply a stay-at-home mom, it's not simply a housewife. It's definitely an ideology.
A lot of it is also associated with Mormons, so that's like another thing in itself. But it all has other connotations, like yeah, being faithful, being devoted.
Because if we compare it, for example, with the cottagecore aesthetic, they're pretty much the same, but without the ideology. It's just the same without the politics. It's the same without saying, "Oh, you're a wife, that's why you do it." It's more like, "No, you just do it because you think it's cute." Like it's a completely different vibe, but it have exactly the same visuals. So that's how I see the treadwife, not as just an aesthetic, but it's actually an ideological role.
It's a kind of lifestyle that they're selling to other people and trying to like convert them into a similar way of being, which is very far right oriented. And as you said, like this term was coined by men in the first place. And it is in a way bringing back women to something we fought over many, many years ago. I mean, actually not that many years ago, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because just bringing women to their traditional roles in a very inconspicuous way, because to a general person that's not going to reflect on it twice, it's bringing these ideas in a very aesthetically pleasing, as you said, and a very appealing way without them even considering like the wider implications of what's going on and what's actually being sold to them.
Yeah.
And
Like it is definitely speaking from like a very privileged position because something that I saw someone saying like a long time ago, and that's I can't remember who it was, is that when you're in that amount of privilege that you choose to comply to patriarchal expectations of what you should be and act like, and it becomes so much easier by complying to them and you benefit out of them, it's like going against all the fights we have done. So, oh, it's easier for me to just comply to what is expected for me because I can have an easier life. But then you kind of threaten and endangered many other women who cannot actually afford that choice. So it talks from a privileged position of like, well, for me it works, therefore it's fine. So, but that's not really true when you apply that to other situations because I mean, no need to say that this was originated in America. But when you apply to other different cultures, you can see how it can be actually quite harmful to spread those type of ideologies for people who would probably don't have the privilege to choose to be a stay-at-home mom. They are forced to do so. They have no other option. They have no other opportunities. And it's also like, oh, I chose to do that because life is hard. And I'm like, well, no fight is easy, right?
yeah, that's true.
And the fact that it's hard for you, perhaps in the workforce, just shows how that fight is also not over. And we need to fight for our rights and opportunities still. And you just choose to comply to the society norms in a lot of quotation marks because it's just easier because I can just bake at home. Like, I also want to not work, but I'm not gonna, limiting my view of a womanhood for that. Like I would rather not
True.
work because I got rich with my own work and got myself financially.
Exactly. And
And
not just get a rich husband, but then have nothing to show for yourself.
also, like how actually selfish it is to say, oh, don't work, just go depend on someone else's money. Let someone else work for you. And I'm like, okay, so you admit that working is hard, you admit that it's difficult, not fulfilling, not good for you, so he can do it. He's like, that's so selfish. Like, oh, so he can like go suffer all of that, and I just stay at home. Like, what the hell? It's so
Yeah,
selfish.
that's
And
true.
like, what's the difference between you and a sugar baby? Like, what's the difference? It's not that different anymore. Like if that's why you're choosing to leave
Yeah,
your
that's
life.
true. And the thing is that like a lot of these women, again, they come from wealthy backgrounds, privileged backgrounds. As I said, they made their passive income online. So it's not like they're actually making a lot of that domestic labor themselves because they have people to do it for them. So in a way, they really are just leisuring around and forming household family duties as an act for fun.
Yeah,
And so it's not, as you said, it's not comparable to a woman who actually is a stay-at-home mom and has to commit herself to those duties because, let's say, someone needs to care for the children and one person needs to work to like sustain income. That's not an analogical situation at all to what like these trad wives are portraying.
yeah.
And so it's completely okay if your goal is to tend to your children and take care of the family and be the primary caretaker of the family. Let's just say that's absolutely fine. Like, we're not condemning people for that. But let's face it, it's not the goal for these women. Like, their goal is to be famous and their goal is to make money off of it. And it's just a certain niche that they picked out to do it with, because they might have as well chosen a different trend, a different lifestyle to portray, or oh, like spend a day with me being a boss bitch in the city or whatever. They could have chosen a different thing. This is just something that they chose to do and to monetize out of it.
Yeah, also because when I think about housework, right? A housework is obviously not a new thing, but it's never been this public before. It's quite interesting to me how all these like traditional wife content is just about talking about what they do,
Yeah,
and, but now we're actually seeing it. We could actually be seeing that work being done. So it's never been this public before because those wives who kind of were kind of forced to be so, they were being closed doors. You would never see what happened behind those doors. You would never see those. Every time you see those propagandas of like the 50s or whatever, of like the housewife, it feels like she's kind of like a magic fairy where everything appears clean, everything is always perfect.
exactly.
And so that domestic work has never been visible. It's always been hidden between like all those ads. And when you have the power to actually honor that domestic work that is so important, and it's never been this public before, you still hide it between like pretty cakes and home.
Exactly. And having your children always dressed in like beautiful matching outfits with clean white lace and bows in their hair. And, you're like filming yourself for 5 seconds with your child in your arms in a beautiful dress, just whisking some eggs for your cake. You're not showing yourself when your children are throwing a tantrum or when they throw up and you have to clean it up, or you burn something in the oven, or when you're scrubbing the toilet. As I said, you're not showing true labor. You're just showing an idealized vision of what it looks like. And that's just wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, and more under that is they had an opportunity, right, to actually honor that work. But by the fact they don't even demand any money for it, they're like, oh, live out of your husband, and then create sources of income elsewhere. So they don't demand any like types of wages on domestic work. If we actually treated this as a job, it will alter and probably thrown away all the discord around third wife because we say that this type of work is a duty, it's only natural of women to
Yeah.
perform. If we start saying that like this is actual work that needs to be paid, it rejects any type of domesticity to be an expression of our nature and to refuse that very female role. Because why do we keep saying that housework is an option for women and not for men? Like, why do we
Yeah,
keep saying,
exactly.
oh, I can choose to be a housewife, I can choose to be this? I'm like, okay, great for you. But why does it always have to be you? Like, why does it always have to be women to do it? Why can't we just like move forward and be like, housework should not be gendered in this way?
Yeah, why do you not see men being the ones starting these accounts and,
Yeah.
showing how they clean their house and cook nice meals? No, when it's men, it's like filming sexualized food and it's always for the job. They're always like, no, but the thing is that like the difference between those accounts is the men are always the ones being professional, you know? Like if they have a cooking account or whatever, anything that's slightly related to domesticity is framed more as that's my business. That's how I do my money. I'm a chef or I'm a cleaner and I'm like, super good at it. Whatever. It's never coming from a sense of duty, as you said, with women, because with women, it's always framed in this like, oh, that's a natural thing for you to do. It's like, I'm embracing my femininity,
Yeah.
I'm just doing what God made me to do or what I was made to do. Like I feel like I finally discovered what I was made. Like my real purpose in life is to do this. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
that's one of my other big beefs of it. It's like reinforcing this prejudiced view of femininity as well, essentializing the
Exactly.
difference between feminine and masculine that keeps being the reason why we keep being discriminated against.
Exactly. And then it makes other women feel inferior in a way because it's like, oh, what if I don't feel that way? Like, what if I don't feel like it's my destiny to tend to a family or to have a family at all? What if I don't feel like it's my, duty to cook well? Or like, what if I don't know how to cook? What if it's just not in my natural skills? Like, am I a failure because of that? No one is gonna call man a failure if he doesn't know how to cook, if he can afford to buy it, can afford someone to do it for him. No one's gonna like discriminate against him. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's fine, whatever, as long as he can order a takeaway or pay for you to go to a restaurant, that's fine. But if a woman can do all that and she cannot cook, people are gonna be like, wow, you're a woman and you cannot cook? Are you for real? Like,
And like those little things do have an impact because, oh, I'm just making videos online. Like, why are you guys all exaggerating? Because we fought for so long to not be associated with these things. We are not saying, and we're never said that doing housework is bad or inferior, but I don't want to have my identity associated with by default. And we fought so long to not
exactly.
have, feminine, the word woman, the word girl, the word whatever associated with housework as by default. And it's really, really infuriating because these people don't even stick to actually their traditional role. They are out there voicing their opinions, out there with platforms, monetizing over it, and they still have this preach of like rejecting modern feminism. Are you fucking kidding me? You out there
That's
saying
the
that
other
stupid shit is thanks to all the women who came before you that you're criticizing that fought for those rights for you to have those stupid ass opinions.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the other thing I wanted to say. A lot of these accounts, maybe that's like an exception for like Nara Smith, for example. I don't think I follow her and I don't think she makes those kinds of statements or
No, no,
whatever.
not at all.
But a lot of these accounts that are more self-labeled as tradwife, as you said, they do say a lot of these harmful things like, oh, reject modern feminism. I just like stop hating on me for like, just wanting to fit into the traditional gender norms. I'm like, babes, like stop flipping it around because if it wasn't for the feminists, you wouldn't even have access to Instagram. Like you wouldn't be allowed to sign up on it. You wouldn't be allowed to
Exactly.
express any public opinion on the internet. You would be stuck at home with no platform whatsoever, and it would be your husband doing all those things. Like you wouldn't even have a voice to be online. Instagram wouldn't be for you. You probably wouldn't even have a phone.
Yeah, sometimes I came across those like 5-second TikTok videos with words like, oh, in a world of boss babes, I chose to be a trad wife. Or even better, patriarchy won, so women have no longer to go to work. Instead, we can stay at home and bake cakes. I'm
It's
just,
so harmful.
I can't, like, I can't even express a thoughtful,
It's
like, opinion
so
on this.
it's so stupid and I'm honestly not surprised that this originated in America because what the fuck? Like, you're so oblivious to your privilege that you're so unaware of it and you're so unaware of history and the context and what women fought for that you just don't see it. You just don't know how good you have it until like it would have been taken away from you. It's no wonder that far-right movements are on the rise because then it takes something super extreme. Like, I don't know, Elon Musk takes over all social media and he's like, actually, from now on, all female accounts are going to be canceled from social media.
Yeah, that can
What
just
are they gonna
happen. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It takes a couple more years of this shit, maybe not the immediate 5 years, but 10, 20 of people exacerbating things like that for it to go back to how it was. And then you're suddenly gonna lose everything that you have that you don't even realize. And it's gonna be too late by that point. You have to
Also,
educate yourself and you have to see what you're actually doing and what you're creating and how you're impacting other people.
and I would like to add on that a lot of them have this thing of like, oh, it's my choice. They love to bring the feminists when they say it was their free choice to do, but they cancel them in any other way. Anyway, they claim to be free because they can make that choice, but can you actually be free if your choice leads to an oppressive situation? Like, are you actually free to make that choice if that choice leads you to oppression and oppression of others? Because we don't live in a free society in order to do so. So you cannot choose that lifestyle and not be oppressed by it, for example, in the financial needs. because we actually don't live in a case of gender equality. So, yeah, you're choosing, but your choice can actually endanger you in the long run because I'm talking about the tradwives that are not wealthy. I'm talking about the tradwives that create content online, but they actually depend on their husband and they chose that because of God or whatever floats their boat. It actually endangers them and they believe it doesn't just because God said so. So you can make all the choices you want, but that can still lead you to an oppression situation where you are limiting your freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, as you said, it's an ideology, and a lot of these women are actually ingrained in it. A lot of the people from these accounts aren't, and they're just contributing, but while being fully aware of what they're doing and being fully aware
Yeah.
that they do not fit in the ideology, but they make the content that does. But there is a lot of people who emulate it, who are in that ideology, and who are just spreading it out to others.
Also, can we just take a moment to say that this whole definition of traditional is so inaccurate? Like, women have always worked. Like, women have literally always worked. Once again, the ones who didn't were the wealthy ones, which was like 1%
Exactly.
of population. Everyone has always worked because guess what? You couldn't live out of one income for 97% of the
Yeah, they were
population.
just working in like shittier jobs, like they were cleaners or nannies.
Or nannies, or working in the fields, or working in shops, or working in whatever. Like
Yeah,
everyone
or like weaving fabrics or, doing hard manual labor.
just pisses me off as well. Like this type of view of the world and of the past and of history that like women haven't worked until the 21st century. I'm like, are you
Yeah, that like we
insane?
had it all and then the feminists spoiled it all because they made us go to the office.
It's
That's
like,
not what the feminists were fighting against. Like they were fighting against people working the shittiest jobs while having to take care of their children and while having like no rights to tend for their future at all, having no voice whatsoever, and not being able to vote or express their opinion in any way.
yeah, many countries, women could only vote in the last 30 years, or like you could not have access to your own, if you could have money and you could not have access to your bank account until like the 1980s. Are you understanding how bad it was?
Yeah, like, are you for real?
Yeah, I think that's really what truly annoys me. It's just like this blunt ignorance of the world, past and present, to affirm these type of choices and values onto others, and you're better than everybody else because you listen to God. Like, who the fuck is this God? Like, who spoke to you in this way? Like, you've been brainwashed. I'm sorry, but you have, and I can't contend my political correctness anymore.
Yeah.
It's just so ungrateful as well that what so many fought for and you just brush it over as it was nothing. It's just it pisses me off. Like my grandma could not go beyond fourth grade because she had to go work. She had to go work to take care of the rest of her family because she was the older of like 10 siblings.
Yeah.
And she worked as a maid for wealthy people who would symbolically play housewives, but who was doing all that work was my grandma because she was the maid in that household. She took care of all the kids and did all the domestic work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all bullshit, and that's been bullshit since ever, since the beginnings of times. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Wanted to talk about are the satirical accounts. So there's a lot of accounts who are quote unquote fake. I mean, they tend to have a little hashtag below that says like satirical content or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the content is made in a way that is made to be believable, especially for, I'm gonna say, less educated people who do not tend to take what they consume critically and just tend to believe things at face value because it's online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it's a verified account and they very rarely scroll down to see if the content is satirical. And a lot of the content is made to be rage bait, so it's very extreme for people to engage with it. And so it would show like a trad wife in like a very exaggerated
Mm-hmm.
kind of style and like super traditional, or like there's this account, I don't remember the handle now, but is this woman who's Mormon trad wife kind of account, and it's all satire, but it's made in like a very make-believe kind of way. And she's also like, oh, we're like running away from the electric waves. Like we need to wear like special helmets when we go out to the grocery store because, the elites are out to get us and the people controlling the world are
My God.
controlling our minds and shit like that. But my point is that people believe that. And when you look at the comments on these posts, is, oh my God, how can you really do that? Like, you're so stupid. Or some people will be like, yeah, that's actually so true. Maybe I should protect my kids from that as well. And that's the point. Like, you're making content. You might say that it's satire, but you need to be aware that an average person is stupid. People are stupid. Like, the type of content you make, that rate rate that you make, people will consume it. And some of them, it may be a small fraction, but some of them will think it's real and you will influence them in a very, very, very negative way. And regardless of the whole rage bait account idea, which I absolutely despise, like it infuriates me whenever I come
Yeah,
across an account like that. I'm just like immediate block. I'm sorry, I don't want to see you.
fine.
Like it annoys me on the next level. But my point is that there is a lot of people who will not realize this is rage bait and they will take the bait and they will think this is real and they will believe it. And some of them may be influenced by it. And I just hate it.
I know, I
I
know. It's very annoying. There's definitely like a lack of media literacy by the general public, which is
Yeah,
so weird because we're talking about a public that's already very digital native. So I'm just like, how can you not tell, you know?
but I feel like, especially since TikTok, when people started using social media as a source of information, so like as a search engine,
Yeah, that's
I
just
feel
crazy.
like I feel like we have become very desensitized to what we see on the internet because before I remember seeing stuff online and was kind of like whatever, it's online, so it may not be true. Or online was not a credible source of information. Like where you were at school and anything you would see on Wikipedia or whatever, teachers would always tell you like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not really credible, like, you cannot use that. And so I was like, I feel like we were always taught to believe that like, what is online is not a good source. But right now, like, all the young generations, I feel they do think of social media as the source of truth, especially now with like, all big world events being broadcasted in real time with social media. The fires happening in LA right now, COVID-19 pandemic, the war, all of those things, they kind of give more credibility to social media as a source of information in a way. So I feel like the public perception has shifted and people started to like people stopped being critical while being on social media.
No,
They would
that's true.
just they would just take everything face value as it is, not even stop to think like, oh, this may not be true, or oh, this might be created in that way on purpose to just be clickbait.
I think
Uh,
that's true. And I think it goes definitely both ways. Either be in, you would go see these satires or you'd go see those genuine videos of how to become a housewife and you take it as actual like, oh, okay, let me like this is my to-do list. This is
yeah,
what I have to do. But I think it also goes very real on the other side too, because as we were saying, like the real problem are the ones who create content in that sense, not people Nara Smith, who actually generally just shows how her life is without ever preaching to you anything, is
yeah,
that yes, those are romanticizations of daily life, even though she is rich, but they should be seen exactly as that. They should be seen as
yeah,
just escapism, maybe some inspo. It shouldn't have any other deeper meaning. And I think there's the opposite side of it, of taking everything at face value as well, as immediately the response is like, are you telling me what to do? No, she's just showing you how to make chocolate. You know what I mean? Actually, she's not like preaching you anything. She's just showing her life. I think it's also a reaction to the pandemic where I think a lot of people became much more aware of class differences and wealth differences, that people find it offensive that someone has more money than you.
yeah.
It kind of puts a higher question of should the wealthy not be allowed in the public? Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, are they not allowed to just show their life as you do? You have different lives, that's true, but that's not their fault, actually. It's not Nara Smith's fault that she married super wealthy. I'm
Yeah,
pretty,
exactly. And all the people in the comments being like, oh, you're so out of touch, whatever. And I'm like, it's just your life as you live yours. Grow up.
yeah,
You're
exactly.
you're
But
just living in a different reality. So you can either do something about it and change it, or try to change it, or try to like be happy in your life and not care about that, or you can have a war in the comments. Like it's not that deep. there's a lot of like other trends that are emerging out of it. Like I recently came across this trend, which is it's just so dumb. I cannot, but it's the trend of unschooling your children.
What? What?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've seen a video essay about it. It's actually really interesting, but it kind of also emerges from those like trad wife community accounts, also in America, obviously.
Obviously, it's America's just a
Uh,
in the making, pretty much.
let's just shut down America, okay? Can
I
someone just
mean,
buy
TikTok has done it.
honestly? And it's those moms who are like, yeah, schools are just those super bad like institutions forcing our children into regulative norms. I don't want my 7-year-old child to just conform to these norms. I don't want them to receive this like formal education, which is just gonna put them in, in a box. I'm gonna unschool my children. So it's not, homeschooling where children actually have to be devoted to like program and, they receive exams and accreditations and they actually are capable of living a normal life as an adult because they have qualifications to go to university and pass exams because they actually went to school when they completed fifth grade, sixth grade. No, these women just straight up refuse to put their children in school. And they're like, oh, I'm just gonna teach my child organically. And obviously, the children are not learning shit. And their way of teaching is just like basically parenting. So, like, oh, answer your children's questions or like, take the time to, teach them about the world around them. And I'm like, that's just regular parenting. Like, that's just what you do outside of your child's school.
Oh my God.
And that thing is only fucking possible in America because I'm pretty sure in my country it's illegal to take your children out of school and not offer
Yes.
them like, formal
Same.
education.
Same.
So, like, the whole concept is just so insane to me because in a few years, those children are going to become adults, but they will not be able to complete high school. Or they're not going to be able to go to university because you deprived them of it because you didn't give them formal education.
I mean, self-called country of freedom, I guess. Like it's so stupid. In my country is also it's mandatory. Like that children have to be in school, and if they find out like a child is not, they will come and get it. Also because they use this thing of the school as also a protective place for the children
Yeah.
because oftentimes if you don't want your child to go to school, it's because you're hiding something that's not very good. So they actually do that
Yeah,
on
exactly. You're
purpose.
like beating your child up or whatever, and you don't
Yeah.
want other people to find out.
This happens in Portugal is if someone who immigrates to here and they come in an illegal way, they actually protect the children. Illegal or not, your child has to go to school. And that is a way to protect them because it offers them conditions to
Okay.
stay in the country, even though they originally came illegally, because it also gives time to the parents to be able to go sort themselves while the kids are at school. It doesn't occupy time at home or like trying to hide them or whatever. And so it's not about enforcing any system. It's actually a protective system of those children, especially when it comes to illegal immigration. Why does someone, immigrate illegally? Is because they're probably escaping from a war or have beyond poverty measures. So that actually protects the
Right.
children because in Portugal, also the meals can be for free at schools. So it actually is much more protective, like having your child. Like that, the whole measurement is to protect children. So that whole trend, I'm so glad I didn't see it because that's just beyond me. Like I can't.
Yeah, I saw like actual videos from it, and it's just, I'm sorry, but these women, they're just like, you yourself should be in school right now. Like, I'm
Like
so,
honestly, yeah,
yeah,
you're the one who needs an education.
honestly, because I'm just like, your poor child had nothing to do with it, and they're gonna be fucked up for life because
I
of you.
know. And it's like so hypocritical, right? Because you're saying, oh, they're forcing our children to go on this mold, yet you are doing way worse than that. You're also forcing them into a format because it's the same thing of those trad wives when they have, like, I've seen videos of teaching my daughter that it's perfectly okay to depend on a man. Like, I've seen that, and I'm just, it's not okay. It's not okay for any party, might I add. It's not okay
Yeah,
for
it's not okay for anyone to be dependent on someone else in life. Everyone should be independent.
it's just
Being in a relationship is like having someone to rely on, but having someone to rely on and being in a partnership is very, very different to being dependent on someone and having to rely on them. And those are two different things, and you shouldn't confuse them.
definitely. Besides, we're talking all about the female side of it all, but I also think it's kind of how these like gender roles are so bad for both sides because then you have the man being the one who has to do everything when it comes to money. It's this whole pressure of making enough money for the wife, for the two children, the dog, everyone. It's so horrible as well to have that pressure, and especially knowing that a lot of these trad wives also quitted jobs or quitted high-end degrees. It's kind of literally a trend of quitting like your high-end stuff to then become a trad wife. It's just putting basically that pressure and that struggle onto someone else's arms and someone else's shoulders. And I think that's also so unfair on the other side. So I think it's like a very clear example on gender roles really hurts both sides. It's not just women, and feminism could totally like come to liberate both sides of these pressures. One of fucking submission duty, and the other one of pressure of holding it all together. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
I see my boyfriend's family who abides to those extremely traditional roles where his mother has been a stay-at-home mom for whole of her life. Her and his father has worked all of his life around 14 to 15, 16 hours a day, every
Yeah,
day, weeks without a day off. And it really like damages both because while she's very a bit oblivious around the world, doesn't know exactly how things work. He's extremely tired, exhausted, and that's how marriage is also sour, and it damages both their lives mentally and physically. Like it is bad for both.
yeah, exactly. It has like so many negative implications, and the fact that this has become a trend is so harmful in itself because things like that should never enter that kind of sphere. And I think it kind of shows the negative power that social media has, and it has a power to glamorize things that really shouldn't be glamorized, and we should really stop doing that as a society. And I feel like women our age, young women, should take conscious effort to not contribute to that in a way.
I think
I
so.
feel
Because that's
like
just being aware of what's going on around you. Not just around you, but like around the world as well.
exactly, and like don't get me wrong, I also don't want to work in the office for the rest of my life, and I love to cook and bake and make pretty things, but it doesn't equal to the fact that I just don't want to have anything for my own, and I don't want to, work maybe in the future in my life, or that I want to be dependent on someone, and I just want to have nothing to show for myself. Women right now, those people who are succumbing to this trend are like really confusing these things. They
Yeah.
don't know what they're contributing to because they feel like, oh, I'm just not gonna need to work, have to go to work and, suffer in the office. And my life is gonna be so peaceful because I'll not have to worry about anything. But they don't realize the negative implications that you're not gonna be your own person. Like you're literally just gonna be a slave to someone else.
Yeah, they're confusing it because truly what's motivating them is a higher issue, and this like slate of gender roles is kind of almost a distraction to cover the real issue that is job precarity, that is inflation on prices of goods and houses, is that
Yeah. All like capitalist issues.
yeah, there's
And
a problem in the economy, and we put this, let's just like, let's go back to tradition. That will fix everything. And I'm like, no, hun, no, babe, that's
no, it won't because then your husband will have those same issues anyways, and you're gonna have to suffer inadvertently, except that time you won't have the means to change anything for yourself because you will be dependent on someone else. So
exactly,
so
exactly.
it's like at least right now you have the means to overcome it and you have the means to make an income for yourself and you have creativity and the means to start your own business and you have the means to do anything that you want, more or less, with obstacles, but still, like you have the means to be your own person and to care for yourself and to have anything that you want. So
Yeah. So I would say the biggest conclusion is that, as we said many times, that it's totally okay to decide to become a housewife or to become a stay-at-home mom. That's all right. But I think the problem here is obviously the politics behind it, because my biggest conclusion is that you should never associate your job or occupation to your gender, because that's going to limit you and how people perceive you and how you are
Exactly.
perceived by others, including your husband, by default. So besides being like such a slippery slope between defining what a wife should be to what a woman should be, that's the biggest danger, is that adding these
Exactly.
extra meanings to the word of wife, even saying that traditional behind it. It's so easy, you can say a wife should be this to a woman should be this, because wife should just mean female person in a marriage contract. That's all it should mean, you know? Besides,
Exactly.
I mean, we didn't even touch on like queer relationships, because that would throw all these people out, all these people away.
Yeah, that doesn't even exist in their universe.
It doesn't
So
even exist in this realm, but I think that's like the real issue that
exactly. And the thing is that you're not only limiting your own view because you may have had it the other way before. So you may have had those opportunities before and you made a conscious choice to use them and to focus on something else. But you're limiting the opportunities of your children because
Mhm.
if you have a daughter and your daughter is going to grow up only seeing that version of life, that version of womanly duties, quote unquote, she will never think of becoming a boss. She will never think of becoming educated. She will never think of going to university. All she will think about is to emulate your way of lifestyle. And that's so harmful because it's just setting the whole female population backwards by
Yeah.
like 50 years, or 80 years. And it can have really, really, really negative impacts 10, 20 years down the line because all the children of these people are going to perpetuate the same schemes. It's just really, really upsetting to me that such a thing has originated online and that someone thought about engineering it and creating it and that it has become viral and it is consumed for content without any thought about those negative implications that we talked about. As we always say, like we live in a society. So everyone is connected.
Sparkles are like going around.
Everyone is connected. And so everything that you do has an impact, especially when you have a platform. That's why internet can be so harmful because it reaches so many people. And so one person's actions can have such a wider impact globally on the society.
Yeah, and my other conclusion is that at the end of the day, with all of this housewife content, we still look down on domestic work and we still look down on the role of the housewife by both extremes of the spectrum. So the most liberal, hardcore feminists reject it completely because they don't want to be associated to a position they know is quite powerless and has been considered inferior. And by doing so, they do condemn it, in fact, to be inferior,
Yeah.
which it shouldn't be. And then you have our lovely trad wives who don't do it any real justice either because they frame it as a natural way of living and don't treat it as an actual job or as an actual labor, just perform it as a full-time hobby of sorts and never as the real labor that it is. So they choose this lifestyle because they deem it as easier when it's
Yeah,
fact it's not. So at the end of the day, with all this, we still look down on domestic work and we've done nothing to uplift the actual true housewives of the world.
exactly. It's just gonna exacerbate the amount of invisible labor that is expected of
Exactly.
women day to day. And it's gonna have an impact of men because they'll be like, oh, this woman I saw on the internet is doing all those things, but you aren't to like, their
Mhm.
girlfriend, their wife, or whatever. In summary, it's bad. Don't
Bad. Like once you see it,
don't-
think twice. Look at it 3 times. Maybe it won't sound as
Exactly.
appealing after the third watch.
Exactly. Like I'm losing my voice over this. Like it's not good. It's
Yeah,
not
my
good.
my glass is over. Like I can't even like cope with it anymore. Like it's like
Don't
now what?
share it. Don't engage with it. Don't give it the platform because it doesn't deserve it.
Yeah,
I mean, we kind of are giving it a platform now because we're talking about it, but
it's
we're
okay.
analyzing it, so it's different.
It's different. It's different. Calling them out.
Exactly.
I would like to leave a last question, kind of like a food for thought for you if you're still on listening. is that I think at the end of the day, with all of this analysis, is that how can we actually honor domestic work performed by women without entrapping them in it? That's like the true message I wanted to leave in the end. That is like, how can we honor it, honor this labor without trapping women in it in terms of social role? That is all.
Period.
Thank you so much for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.